Good evening and thank you for joining. My name is Alexander O'Hara. I'm the National Director for Catechetics, and on behalf of the Council for Catechetics of the Irish Episcopal Conference and Veritas, you're all most welcome to the second webinar in this series, Together Along the Way, Conversations on Catholic Faith Formation in Contemporary Ireland. The aim of this webinar series, organised by the Council for Catechetics and Veritas, aims to bring together leading theologians, religious educators, and catechists to explore new avenues for Catholic faith formation in contemporary Ireland, inspired by the new Directory for Catechesis published by the Pontifical Council for Promoting New Evangelization in 2020. In the large, diverse, and complex religious education landscape, directories for catechesis function as atlases that guide educators and faith communities. However, we need leaders and visionaries who help us to interpret those atlases and read the maps they contain. In the run-up to the National Synod in Ireland, we hope that this webinar series will animate and inspire religious educators, teachers, pastoral leaders, evangelists, else interested in shape of the Catholic tradition, and to note that this is a public forum and we will be recording this webinar. So I'm honoured to welcome our second speaker in this series, Siobhan O'Donoghue. Siobhan is a post-primary religion and English teacher from Wexford. She's been teaching in Loreto Secondary School, Wexford, for the past 16 years. She studied at Mater Dei Institute of Education, where she was awarded a Master's in Religion and Education. Her thesis focused on the efficacy of IT as a cross-curricular resource for the teaching of English and religious education. And Siobhan has worked with Veritas since 2018 as part of the writing team for both Soul Seekers and the Look Up program for Transition Year. Since December last, Siobhan has been seconded from her job in Loreto to take up the position of post-primary lead in Veritas. So Siobhan will speak to us this evening on catechesis in the realm of young people, a religion teacher's perspective. So Siobhan, you're very welcome, and you might lead us in an opening prayer, please.
Thanks, Alex. I thought I would begin tonight with one of John O'Donoghue's blessings from Benedictus. We're all gathered here with a common purpose, and that is to bring the gospel to the young people that we work with. So I'd like to share with you his blessing for work. May the light of your soul bless your work with love and warmth of heart. May you see in what you do the beauty of your soul. May the sacredness of your work bring light and renewal to those who work with you and to those who see and receive your work. May your work never exhaust you. May it release well springs of refreshment, inspiration, and excitement. May you never become lost in bland absences. May the day never burden. May dawn find hope in your heart, approaching your new day with dreams, possibilities, and promises. May evening find you gracious and fulfilled. May you go into the night blessed, sheltered, and protected. May your soul calm, console, and renew you.
Thank you, Siobhan. So the floor is yours.
Thanks, Alex. So good evening, everyone. I'm delighted to be here with you this evening to talk about the new Directory for Catechesis and how it can influence our work with young people in secondary schools today. Tonight, I'll focus on two main areas of the Directory: methodology in catechesis and catechesis in the realm of adolescents. My comments here tonight come from my own experience working as a religion teacher for over 16 years. and my work developing religious education resources for Veritas, with whom I am working full-time at present. I am also a mother to 3 young children aged 4, 8, and 11. Their experience of religious education in primary school has also given me a lot to reflect on in terms of how we proclaim the gospel to our young people in a meaningful and relevant way. It's a great privilege to watch young people grow in their awareness of God and his role in their lives. My 4-year-old is at a fascinating stage of faith at the moment. He's full of questions about God. He wants to know who God is and why can't I see him? If I talk to him, why doesn't he answer? We were at Mass a couple of weeks ago and he wondered, was the priest dressed up as God? He sees God through the lens of superheroes and Santa, someone with magical powers who has the ability to save the day and bestow gifts. He's not too far off the mark, really. My daughter is in 2nd class and she's at that enviable stage of faith where she simply accepts what she's being taught in preparation for her first communion. She often answers her little brother's questions with an eye roll and a very matter of fact. You have to say sorry to God when you do something wrong, or God is in the holy bread at Mass. Again, she's not wrong. My eldest is at that stage where he doesn't really talk too much about it. It's all going on inside at the moment for him, and that's okay too. It's a great privilege to be a catechist and a parent, accompanying our young people as they progress through different stages of their relationship with God. But it is also a tremendous responsibility, one that can be overwhelming too. That's why when the new directory for catechesis was published, I felt a sense of relief. It really does give practical and real guidance on how we can effectively proclaim God's word to all people in a meaningful and helpful way. And I think it's helped me as much as a parent as it has a catechist. So as catechists, parents, teachers, how do we support our young people through all of these different stages of faith development? And there's really no one easy answer, unfortunately. But the new directory reflects the necessary elements of teaching and personal formation for catechetical work. And it helps us as religious educators to respond to the challenges posed by the digital dimension of life today, along with the globalization of contemporary culture. It's tempting to vilify these developments of the modern world. Yes, they do present challenges and many challenging changes to many aspects of life, but they also bring with them amazing opportunities, some of which I will cover later in my talk. I've been really encouraged by the new directory. It reassures me that we are doing a lot right in our religion classrooms. In my work at the moment, I have the pleasure of meeting with RE teachers all over Ireland, and I can see firsthand that there's a lot of really good work happening in the area of catechesis. But teachers need continued support, not only in teaching methodologies and good resources, but in their own faith development too. Time needs to be prioritized for religion teachers to do this. Teaching religion is not just about teaching content. It's about accompanying our students on their own faith journey and supporting them in their struggles, their doubts, their questions, and so on. I believe we can only do this effectively when support is provided to us for the development of our own faith. Time, as for teachers, that is our currency. Time needs to be allocated to this very important area. Which brings me on to some of the methodologies outlined in the directory that we can use in our work with young people. I'm hoping tonight I can give you some practical ideas to take back to you with you in your work with young people and the work in our classrooms today. The directory devotes an entire section to teaching methodologies. A lot of these you are no doubt using already, but it is helpful to spend time taking account of the methodologies we are using, while at the same time being open to trying new things. Catechesis does not have a single method, but is open to evaluating different methods. It should adopt widely differing approaches. The directory identifies 5 methodologies which are effective in passing on faith to our students. It recognises that, and I quote, "Being an object of faith, the content of catechesis cannot be subjected to any method whatsoever. It's important to keep in mind that the educational goals of catechesis determines the methodological choices we make. There's no one single method that works here. You as an educator and catechist are best positioned to know what works in your particular context. But I would say that we need to test everything and keep what is good. We should be evaluating, collaborating, talking among our departments and with the wider faith community as much as possible. And I'll go through some of these suggested methodologies now, the first one being human experience. Human experience is central to catechesis, no matter what age group we're working with. We must take students where they're at in their lives. Our job as catechists is to present the Word of God to our students in a way that speaks to their lived experience. The experience of teenagers should be approached with an attitude of love, acceptance, and respect, no matter what that experience is. It's important to create a classroom environment that's open, safe, and welcoming. No question, doubt, or experience is irrelevant. And we can't take offence, no matter what is said, well, within reason, obviously. In my experience, teenagers love to be controversial and play the game of shock the religion teacher. But the worst thing we can do here is react in a defensive way. I try to adopt the attitude that even when students are disagreeing with me or challenging me, they are engaging with the content. Silence is really the enemy of the religion classroom. We've all felt that tumbleweed experience, I'm sure, particularly in non-exam religion. I'll take controversy over silence any day. When Jesus taught through the parables, he sought encounters and welcomed people in their concrete life situations. They were able to recognize themselves in his stories and therefore recognize themselves in God's plan. As religion teachers, we must do the same. Students should be able to recognize their own lives in what we are teaching them and recognize the presence of God in their life experiences. That presents its own challenges. We need to try to keep up with what's going on for teenagers today. One of the best ways to do this is to talk to them, to listen to them. Ask them what works. What are they interested in? What's all the rage these days? Then we must find ways of incorporating what they tell us into our classes. Evaluation tools at the end of a particular module or topic are an excellent way of measuring student engagement. Asking students how you are doing as a teacher can be a bit scary. You might not always like what you hear, but it is an extremely effective way of finding out if your classes are genuinely capturing the reality of teenage life. Catechesis is the language of faith, and the Church communicates her faith through biblical language, symbolic and liturgical language, doctrinal language, and performative language, the witness of the saints and martyrs. So how do we, as educators and catechists, engage our students while at the same time communicating faith through these mediums? As catechists, we need to try to adopt the language of our students in a creative way. This is challenging. In my work as both a teacher and writer, it's something I have to grapple with every day. But we have to remember that the mission is still the same, but the language by which the gospel is proclaimed must be renewed. This is crucial in order to be understood by our contemporaries, and so that the Catholic tradition may speak to the cultures in the world today and help them to be open to the eternal fruitfulness of the message of Christ. The gospel needs to be enculturated into the language of today. Two excellent examples of faith leaders successfully doing this are Pope Francis and his use of Twitter and Instagram as a prophetic medium, and Bishop Robert Barron's YouTube channel and his Instagram presence. But how do we do this in the classroom? We need to be careful with the resources we choose. We should plan well, particularly in the non-exam setting. We should collaborate with colleagues and the leaders of our faith communities. As I've already mentioned, religion teachers need to be supported in this, in ways I think perhaps that other subject teachers don't. We need our bishops, our priests, our diocesan advisors, trust bodies, parishes to work with us in passing on the faith to our students. For me, one of the most effective methodologies I use in the classroom is story. Everyone loves a good story, myself included. I don't know if anyone here tonight remembers that awful website that was popular a few years ago called ratemyteacher.com. As a young teacher at the time, it was in vogue. I couldn't resist having a look to see what my students were saying about me. One comment from a particular student sticks out to this day. She said, "All you have to do is tell her a story and the whole class is gone." And I have to admit, this is often true. I can't resist a good story. But what students don't realise is that when we are listening to stories, we are learning. John Shea says that when he is telling stories, I can feel the flow between myself and the listeners. We are both attentive and invested in what is unfolding. The story becomes a commonly shared world. What happens to the characters in the story is important, and to some extent, what is happening to them is also happening to us. I love that quote, "All stories are true, some of them even happened." The truth that can be revealed through story can often have a greater impact on us than any other teaching method. Narrative language fosters the experiential dynamism of the faith because it involves all dimensions of the person: emotional, intellectual, and moral. It is therefore good to recognise the value of story in catechesis because it highlights the historical dimension of the faith and its existential significance, interweaving the story of Jesus, the faith of the church, and the lives of those who listen to it. This brings us to the significance of memory in catechesis. The directory highlights how memory is an integral dimension of salvation history. Memory harkens back to the primacy of grace, to the recognition of God's gifts and to gratitude for these, to living within a tradition without cutting its roots. Good catechesis makes use of stories of salvation history to help the believer feel part of the history. In light of this, it is clear that we as teachers of the faith need to pass on these stories to our students because they don't have these memories. We need to show them how the story of the Christian people emerged and how it has evolved over time. How all that Jesus said and did in his ministry was first revealed in the stories of the Old Testament. There are the big stories and little stories that need to be told. Stories of people of faith, people such as Oscar Romero, John Hume, Maximilian Kolbe, Martin Luther King, that bear witness to gospel values at work in our world today. It is our job to keep these stories alive in our pedagogy, to keep the Lord's presence alive. In recent years, with the many new initiatives around teaching and learning, the memorization or learning off of material has been discouraged in a way. There is more focus on experiential and student-centred learning. Indeed, the aims of the new junior cycle are just this: to provide a balance between learning content and developing skills. Anyone here who has prepared students for junior cycle exams will surely identify with the unpredictability of exam papers now to a more skills-focused curriculum. Don't get me wrong, this is a good thing, but I would argue that there is still a place for memorizing or learning something off by heart, not just in catechesis, but in education in general. It is important that catechesis, after presenting the value and the explanation of texts and stories from sacred scripture, should also assist in the memorization of these in order to offer an immediate content that is part of the common heritage of believers. The directory suggests the blossoms of faith and piety do not grow in the desert places of memoryless catechesis. It advises that it is essential to accompany this memorization with time taken to take in texts gradually and understand them in depth in order for them to become a source of Christian life on a personal and community level. As a post-primary religion teacher, this is often something I am reluctant to do, to ask students to learn a piece of scripture or a prayer off by heart. I think I have a fear of coming across as old-fashioned maybe, or maybe of being boring. At the same time, I wouldn't think twice about asking an English class to learn a poem or a passage from Macbeth off by heart. And I do wonder why this is the case. I don't think there's anyone here tonight who needs me to tell you how much art and particularly music can appeal to young people. Using both art and music in our religion classes gives us a rich opportunity to engage our students' interests while at the same time communicating the language of faith. The directory tells us when works of art are selected carefully, they can contribute to displaying in an immediate way multiple aspects of the truths of faith, touching hearts and assisting in the internalization of the message. I think this is particularly true for young people who often don't like being talked at or feeling like they are being told what to do or worse, what to believe. I had an experience of this last year with my transition year religion class. We were exploring Jesus' question to his disciples, "Who do you say that I am?" The aim of the lesson being to enable the students to enrich their understanding of who Jesus is through exploring both religious depictions of Jesus in art and story. This is not always an easy sell in a transition year class. So to teach the lesson, I showed students lots of different artistic depictions of Jesus from different artistic styles. Some of the examples I used were Warner Salmon's 1940 image of Jesus that reflects a very traditional Jesus, Janet Mackenzie's Jesus of the People painted in 1999, a 19th century engraving depicting Jesus telling the disciples to let the children come to him, a contemporary cartoon of Jesus cleansing the temple, a Baroque carving showing the moment where Pilate presents Jesus to the crowd after he had been crowned with thorns, Christ the Redeemer in Rio, and Homeless Jesus, created by Timothy Schmaltz in 2013. I then asked the students to reflect on what they had learned about Jesus from the images they had seen and to tell me which image remained most clearly in their mind. I was never more convinced of the power of art in catechesis as I was in that moment. Their responses were inspiring, and I felt they had learned more about Jesus in that 40-minute lesson than they had in any other class I had taught. They were genuinely affected by the pictures and images, and they really made them think. I think this is really encouraging for us as religion teachers and catechists because the possibilities for really creative, engaging classes are endless. Film, music, and literature are also a rich resource. There are far too many examples to mention here tonight, but anytime I watch a film, read a book or a poem, listen to a song, I ask myself if it would work in religion class. And the answer is more often than not, yes, it would. It's not news to anyone that young people and digital technology go hand in hand. Sometimes it's hard to see where a young person's hand ends and their phone begins. They're so attached to them. We as adults spend a lot of time worrying about our children's reliance on technology as a means of communicating. There's no doubt that when used incorrectly, or when digital communication becomes the only means of interacting with others, there is a problem. But digital language tools can be a very effective teaching tool, one we as catechists must engage with, or we risk appearing out of touch or insignificant to the young people we're working with. There are so many ways we can do this. Again, I refer to Bishop Robert Barron as an excellent example of someone who has used social media as an effective means of communication that bears witness to evangelical values. It is important, though, for us as teachers to educate our students in the good use of digital tools. This is their world now, and we have to inhabit it with them. It can be tempting to dismiss social media as bad for us and a waste of time. But if they're spending all their time in this world, we need to help them to discern the positive aspects from the ambiguous ones, the same way we would talk to them about the real world. It is also important, however, to show our students that virtual reality can never replace the spiritual, sacramental, and ecclesial reality experienced in direct encounter with one another. I think this is one of the many things the pandemic taught us. Nothing can replace in-person communication. The more we can provide our students with opportunities to communicate with one another about their faith, the richer the classroom experience will be. We are called as catechists to provide our students with the experience of community. One way we can do this is to create a sacred space dedicated to catechesis. Setting aside a room or creating an oratory in our schools can help to foster a sense of community and can be effective instruments of proclamation, not just for our students, but for all members of the school community. These spaces should be welcoming and well kept. And used well, these spaces can become the centre of all faith activity, creating a climate of familiarity that fosters a sense of a community of faith. In fostering this community, we should be mindful of the age and stage of our students are at. For pre-adolescents, that is first and second years, this is a time where the image of God received in childhood is refashioned, and we as catechists should approach this delicate passage with care. We should try to present Jesus to these young people as a brother who loves, a friend who helps one to be one's best in relationships, does not judge, is faithful, and values skills and dreams. This is a Jesus young adolescents can relate to. For older adolescents, 3rd to 6th years, this is a time characterized by the drive for independence, but at the same time, sometimes a fear of beginning to separate from the family. It's tempting to approach this stage in a young person's life with the attitude that this is a time to get through. We'll all just hold our breath and hope for the best, that we all come out the other side. But this is a normal and natural part of growing up. So it is our job as the adults in their lives to accept without judgment their search for meaning and freedom and to accompany them along the way. Which brings me to my final thought for the evening. Where do they go from here? When these adolescents leave secondary school, where do they go next on their faith journey? In my experience working with young people, I have seen that most, if not all young people, show a drive towards the search for meaning and social engagement. But many fall away from the church or display an indifference or distrust towards it. This, of course, is not the case for all young people. Some will continue to actively participate in the life of the church. But I do often wonder, as they leave us in 6th year, where can they find the catechetical support they had throughout primary and secondary school in their adult life? The directory speaks of the necessity to become more flexible, inviting young people to events or occasions that provide an opportunity not only for learning, but also for conversing, celebrating, singing, listening to real stories, and experiencing a shared encounter with the living God. I truly believe that this is one of the most important areas of future work in catechetics. There needs to be formal recognition of young people's participation in religious education at post-primary level. Most students will study religion as a non-examination subject, particularly at senior cycle. And I think we need to explore ways of officially recognising this engagement with their faith, not just at a school level, but at a parish and diocesan level too. When students leave primary school, many of them are confirmed by the church as adult members of the faith community. We need to do something similar at second level. These young people should leave school feeling that they are part of a community of faith, that community sees them, values them, and continues to be there for them long after their formal education ends. So I hope some of the areas I focused on tonight will help you in your very important work with the young people in our schools. And I have to say, I found the directory a really helpful document and a very accessible read. So I really would encourage you, if you haven't already, to read it and read through the relevant sections to your work. And hopefully after tonight, you'll do that. So I'll hand back to Alex now, and I think we might have some time for discussion.
Thank you so much for that, Siobhan. That was really interesting, and I really liked your piece about stories, because I agree with you. We all love a good story, and it particularly works in teaching. The piece you talked about for children, or for young people after they leave school, where do you see the responsibility for that lying? Because I mean, in many ways, if they go on to third level education, perhaps there's an opportunity there for them to engage with chaplaincy services or whatever. But for young people who don't go into any kind of formal education, is it with the parish? Is it with families? With whom do you see them engaging after second level?
I think, yeah, I think it's a combination of all of that, Marie. I think, yes, certainly in the parish, but I think it's more that when they leave, they're formally, I suppose, shown where to go from there, and how they can access the community, really. I feel a lot is done for them in school and in ways. And for lots of students, it's their only experience of community and community of faith. We can't assume it happens in the home for all students. So, yeah, I think possibly within the parish, continued links with the school. Yeah, I think so. I think I would envision that. I'd love to see more, I suppose, structured support for that age group, particularly within their parishes or within their dioceses. But I would see it as a kind of a combination of work from the school or the trusts or the patrons or whoever it is, and the parish. I'd love to see a more kind of structured, formal passage for them from secondary school.
Okay, thanks, Siobhan.
There was some questions really to reflect about that Siobhan sent ahead of time, which I can share. So when teaching ORE, particularly non-exam ORE, how much are you influenced by how your students will react to the content? At times, are we afraid to teach the religion faith in the religion classroom? Is there more pressure to entertain rather than teach? And what methodologies work for you? So particularly if you have any comments as educators that you'd like to share.
Alex?
Hello, Father Billy.
Hello, Alex. Hello, Siobhan. Thank you.
Hi, Father Billy.
Greetings from Wexford.
Yes.
Well done, Siobhan. I really enjoyed your talk, and the Loreto students are blessed to have you there, or were anyway, and Veritas is now. But it's just something you mentioned. Bishop Barron there in America, something that he talks about a lot, and I'd just like to hear your comments and observances. That, in the I suppose in the understanding of the growth of the human person and of the student in secondary school, there's a strong emphasis on choices of the students themselves. Like, what do you want to be? Who would you like to become? What course would you like to choose? And it's in the prevailing culture, like about, my life, my choice, etc. Talk about pro-choice as well. But the contrast with the gospel is about a summons and an invitation to respond to a call from without ourselves, from God, basically, that each of us are subject to a vocation and to a calling. And Bishop Barron often makes the point that, this call to spiritual adventure is a more wide open, exciting space than just the small, narrow confines of my life, my choice, my fears, my concerns, my hopes, my dreams. But is that a contrast that you can see being played out in the world in which young people are growing up, and the the gospel call to spiritual adventure and the emphasis on election and vocation that we see in the scriptures.
Yeah. So is your question your question, do I see that among young people, that sense of,
I suppose, would they be aware of the church's proclamation that they have a vocation? Are they sufficiently aware, or do we need to work harder to remind them of that?
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up tonight, Father Billy, because what we're working on in Veritas at the moment is a new program for senior cycle RE, and that is the exact theme of the program, that called, gifted, sent out is the entire theme of the program, because we recognize that there's a need to bring a relevance to young people of that, and to make them aware that a calling isn't just, as you say, choice about where, my career and what subjects I'm going to choose. The choice is far bigger than that, and to, I suppose, awaken in them and help them to recognize the call to adventure, and how that call to spiritual adventure, as you called it, comes in all forms, and you may not recognize it in the here and now and in your immediate school experience, but the call is there, and it's there for absolutely everyone, and we're focusing on that theme. I think it's to show them that call or that vocation to is to give back to the world in some way, and it's found through service, it's found through connection to something greater than yourself. So yes, I think they are aware of it. They may not be able to name it as that, but I think young people, particularly this generation, and I think the climate crisis has shown us that young people are particularly passionate about that and feel compelled to act and compelled to do something. And so we're hoping in this new program to show them and to help them to recognize that we are all called to make a contribution to the world, and that call is definitely greater than the immediate and the here and now, and it's something that I think young people really respond to. I think they can really relate to that. Yeah.
I'm delighted to hear that, Siobhan, that emphasis is on the new program, because even from my own memory with people like St. John Paul II, like, he was very, he didn't package the message that, God wants everything you have. He wants your whole life, which was a scary demand. But on the other hand, it was something really exciting that you wished you could do. So, and I think that sense of idealism really speaks to young people's hearts.
Yeah, and I think it's so important that you help them to recognize that vocation can come in so many different forms, and it's being open to it, and seeing where it takes you, and being, and a lot of what we're focusing on in the program is, what holds us back from that, why, that resistance to the call. I think that's so important when you're working with young people.
Thank you.
Yvonne?
Hello. Hi, Brendan.
Hi, how are things? Thanks very much for the address tonight. I think I pretty much agree with everything you said there. Two things in particular. I'm glad to see you flagging the arts as a method, because I always found it a very disarming way of dealing with it. If in a class where there might be some negativity, approaching it from as a story or art, I think is a useful way to do it. And secondly, you mentioned it tonight, the whole challenge of non-exam RE, and it's always been a bugbear of RE teachers. I found it that way myself, but I think it's also good to see that as an opportunity, because sometimes following exam courses, you can feel a bit constrained with content to cover and exams coming up and CBAs and God knows what. So it'd be good to see non-exam as opportunity to take a bit more of a leisurely stroll through whatever course you're following, and also a greater chance to tap into the liturgical seasons, which mightn't fit so easily into an actual course.
Yeah, Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. The opportunities in non-exam religion, are they really are endless. Sometimes though, because it can be very much open, and there's a huge amount of freedom, it can lack structure. And I think that's so important that in that space, when we're given this opportunity of, in lots of schools, 2 hours a week with these young people for religion class, it's so important that we approach that in a structured way, in a planned way, and that we're careful about how we approach it. But I think you're right. I have a lot of time for exam religion as well. I've taught it up to Leaving Cert level, and I think it's a wonderful course for students, that they can learn so deeply about their faith, and from that, I think a lot of formation can happen. But I feel our students in our schools that have the opportunity for both are so lucky. But within the non-exam space, it can be really challenging, but done well and well planned, it can be amazing, and an amazing experience for students.
Siobhan, I would like to just say that I totally endorse everything that you've said, and I've been teaching RE for several years. I'm from Loreto in Oma, so it's lovely to hear another Loreto teacher sharing her experiences. Just to say that in Loreto Oma, we follow the Ballygall project at post-16 or senior cycle, as you would say, and we have introduced to the non-exam year 13 an experiential program of RE, where we take them on a Tuesday morning for 2 hours out to our parish hall, which is very close by, and we're very blessed to have that building accessible to us. And we would have 4 or 5 teachers simultaneously programmed there with the whole year group, which would be like 130. Wow. And we present a very much an experiential program to them, and we would invite speakers in, and we have group work, and we do everything that you said, or not all the time, of course, but we have group work, we have discussion, we involve them in prayer and drama, artwork, depending on what our theme is. And we have found that this moving from the chalk and talk approach to the experiential, as you have said, has been a great success with our students, and they look forward to it every week. And then it has worked really well. So I think it's endorsing a lot of what you've said, and it's faith in action. So absolutely, just to share that experience. And thank you for your presentation. It was excellent.
Thank you, and thanks, Katrina. Can I just ask, Katrina, is it your seniors, their timetable for 2 hours on that's already for the week, and they all go?
The whole year group moved to the parish hall at 10:25 until 12:20. Wow. And we have that 2 hours, and then on a Friday they have a half hour of outreach with various like with the elderly, with Faith Friends programs in the local primary schools, with our special school. Some of their children come in, and it's a very successful, again, active outreach program, and the pupils then get to see and share their faith in action. But it connects them, it engages them, involves them. Not all of the sessions, all of the time, of course, but we find that it keeps them connected with us, and we put responsibility on them. And for us, it has been a great success.
So it sounds fantastic. Thanks, Katrina.
Thank you. Comment I could make. I was involved for 30 years in third level. Okay. And to give a story, Siobhan likes a story.
Yeah, I do.
A piece of graffiti in the toilet, obviously, and it said, "Life, a terminal sexually transmitted disease." And it showed where a lot of the students are at that point. And one of the great calls, I think, that we have, Jesus, he said, "I've called you to life and to live it to the full." And the time and the need for discussion we found very, very important. At present, as a parish, we're running a youth alpha group for the transition years. And it's the discussion time that's the most important. So I think when you're outside the exam Your controversial class, I think, is brilliant. It allows people to discuss, to throw their ideas at you and see how they bounce back.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so important for the development of an adolescent, I think that. Anyway.
Thanks, David. Thank you.
Sorry, Alex, if I may come in there. I'm just, it's something you touch. Thank you very much for the presentation, Siobhan. I'm retired from teaching 3 years and I want to go back into the classroom now tomorrow. So thank you. But I'm just struck by something, some underlying theme that's there. You see, for me, I think young people from 12 to 18, I think they have a connection with the church. They have a connection with the person of Jesus. But when they leave school, they don't have it anymore, because I think during the school years, they somehow lose the connection with the parish.
Yeah.
You know, that's my personal kind of take on it. I won't back it up on any empirical evidence. So I think then when they leave at 18, there's this big gap for them. There's this big void for them. So I think that's something, and youth ministry, I think in all the dioceses is extremely important to try and maybe tackle that gap. But I'm just throwing it out there. That's my perception of it, that there is that gap once they leave schools.
Just one suggestion, sorry, to the chair and Siobhan, and the valuable work that you're doing. Like one of the ideas or possibilities is that you would tag at the end of the chapter for the senior cycle religion, kind of digital and online resources that the students can continue to be nourished by as they leave school, like the likes of Father Barnes' Word on Fire, and Father Mike Schmitz in America. There's other great resources that they can maybe sample when they're in school, and then when they're in college, that they continue to be edified by. So I think that's an idea for the great work that you're doing for students as they're about to cross that threshold from second level into third level. But just to direct them to where they can be fed, and the resources that are out there, and there are many good resources out there.
I think that's in the pipeline, isn't it? In Veritas.
Yeah, absolutely. That there'll be the digital resources available. But I think what Dermot was saying there is right, that there is this gap. A lot will come back later on as they start families and, you know, or get married, but I do feel there is this gap, and I wonder, can we find some creative way of kind of helping them through that, or keep maintaining that connection that is automatic almost for them in school. It's you know, they don't have to seek it out, it's there for them. But is there a way we can, you know, hold on to them in a way as they, wherever they go after their formal education?
Thank you again for all your comments and for your participation, and thank you again so much to Siobhan for your presentation this evening. So our next speaker in the series will be Timothy P. O'Malley from the University of Notre Dame. Tim is the Director of Education at the McGrath Institute for Church Life, and he'll be talking to us on Wednesday, the 20th of April at 7 o'clock. The link for registration will be available on the catechetics.ie website. So we look forward to seeing you then, and Slán agus Beannacht.